G'day, in this video I'm going to finally tackle the fence for my Mitre Saw station thing. The Wood Night is sponsored by I Would Like. To make the fence I'm going to make it out of whiteboard. This was $12. It's a sort of quarter sheet. It's 300mm wide by 2.4 metres, so it's the full length of a sheet of melamine. I don't need a full sheet kicking around. I've only got this project to do and it was $12, so nice and cheap. I'm not going to use any T-track. I'm going to make I'm not going to make my own, but I'm going to cut a nice groove for a T-track bolt. I've got a quick toggle clamp and I'll cut the length of the screw down to that once I know what length I need. And I've got some right to left tape. I think I picked this up from Timbercon. I don't typically do a lot of really big furniture, but when I do, it tends to be no bigger than about 2.1 meters. The projects I have in mind specifically are bed frames, and the longest length on that is 2030 millimeters, which is probably the biggest thing that I'm going to do for a very long time, and certainly the longest that I need to make nice and repeatable. I'm going to make my fence from the edge of the blade to 2.1 meters. That should give me enough capacity without totally taking over everything. So the first step to do is to cross cut the whiteboard to length, and that's about 1.7 meters from the edge here to the 2.1 meter mark. I ripped the melamine into 3 strips, 2 at 100mm and then whatever was left over. This will form the fence, the base and the square supports. I drilled a 1/2 inch pilot hole at either end of the board where I wanted my 5/16 inch groove for the T-track bolt to go through. I could then place that on the router table over the router bit and round halfway through, then flip it around the other way. This helps reduce stress on the bit. Over at the Mitre Saw, a stop block helped me create evenly sized squares for supports to stiffen up the fence. The bolt wasn't going to magically pass through the supports, and while I could undo it and then pull out the bolt whenever I wanted to go to the next section, a better way is just to add some clearance. Over at the router table, using 2 spring clamps as my start and stop points, I could quickly nibble away at the blocks to clear for the bolt head. Then it was just a matter of screwing everything together. When working near the edge of a board, particularly in sheet goods, I like to hand drive in the screw so I can feel and hear it before it splits. For the stop, I cut down some form ply. To mount the fence to the cabinets, I use a long jointed piece of hardwood clamped up against the Mitre Saw's existing fence. Then I could drill through the fence base and cabinets in one hit. Threaded inserts will hold the fence down to the cabinet top, but also make it removable in case I need to replace it or move something. Two M6 bolts and a couple of large washers later, and it was done. The right to left tape has adhesive on the back. It's just like applying masking tape. Really long metallic masking tape. I've taken my first test cut with the Mitre Saw Fence. On the fence it measures 775 millimeters and the cut piece measures 776. If it was the other way, so it measured say 775 on the fence and this was 770, I could just add a cursor to go over to where the actual measurement is. In this case I'm a millimeter out, but the wrong way for a cursor, so I can just trim that down by 1 millimeter and then that should be correct. That was the wrong way to go about it. By reducing the size here, all I did was bring it to exactly the same point. That hasn't changed anything there because I'm not locking in any differently. So what I sort of need to do is create kind of an L-shaped bracket. Then I can create a cursor that I can do some micro adjustment on. So the stop here registers at the exact same point, which is 775, but the cursor reads 776. I've just got a paddle pop stick there and well, I had just an offcut there to give an example. So I've got another piece of this phenolic coated plywood. So I can cut a little corner out of it there. And I need to find something to work as my cursor that I can drill a elongated slot in and then finally glue or just screw it down to the back side of this. I'll also need to cut a recess in there for the cursor. So I need to find what I'm going to use first and then go from there. That's now dialed in, so this little stop has got, well, I actually ended up using a mixing stick, paddle pop stick, whatever you want to call it, as the cursor. So that is set 1 millimeter back from the edge of this stop here. So that actually sets it to the correct size. Larger blocks obviously could cause issues, but typically I'm working with long and wide boards if I'm using the Mitre Saw rather than thick, wide, long boards, because that's just what I work with. So I am pretty happy with this. It is not the best way to do it, but the fence, apart from the tape, cost me $12. I think the tape was about the same amount. Using T-track would obviously be better because it's more rigid. It would be probably just as easy, but to do this length would cost me $40 and plus materials, plus the tape, so this is pretty cheap. I've been meaning to do this for a long time, so I'm happy I finally got to it. So the next step is to sort of get a bit better sawdust control for the Mitre Saw so that this doesn't get skewed from sawdust when making lots of cuts. So I'll build a shroud around here to contain the sawdust, but given that I've been sort of meaning to do this since December last year, I'm not going to hold my breath on how long it takes me to do that. Thanks for watching.